Hi, I'm John.
This is Nick.
I'm Andrew.
Welcome to JNA Podcast. This is episode number 3. And as you guys might have heard last time, if you caught our last episode, today's episode is about conspiracy theories. What are they? What are our favorites? We're going to, have a little bit of discussion about our favorites. And you might have all heard Andrew was pretty into this shit, so I'm going to let him take it from here.
That I am, John. That I am. I do have a little spiel I like to give off about before I start with the theory that I picked. I just like to point out that the conspiracy theory definition, according to Webster, is a belief that some covert but influential organization is responsible for a circumstance or event. And just to name some like famous conspiracy theories out there, you got JFK assassination, Roswell UFO crash in New Mexico, 9/11, the inside job, obviously, MLK assassination, and the moon landings. And the one I think is absolutely most absurd is the flat Earth theory. Now, the one I picked is actually about Area 51 and one of the very first guys to ever come out on Area 51, and his name is Bob Lazar. And I'm going to give you just a very quick and brief description of exactly who Bob Lazar is. If this is a topic that you find interesting, you're more than welcome to do your research yourself. And also, there is a podcast with Joe Rogan with Bob Lazar in an interview, and there is a documentary on Netflix called Bob Lazar, UFO and Aliens. Now, Bob Lazar first came out in 1989 as hidden on TV by a guy named Dennis. Then later to come to find out his actual name was Bob Lazar. And he claimed that he used to work at a site called S4, a site several kilometers south of Area 51. There also claims that he was reverse engineering UFOs propulsion systems at this S4 site. He's claimed he's worked there for a long time. There's a lot of skeptical things coming up about Bob Lazar when you really get into it and you really look into who he is. One thing I find most intriguing is that after he came out that he worked at Area 51 is that there is basically nothing on paper about this guy. I think you could find like newspaper clippings and stuff like that, but beyond that, like the guy's pretty much unemployed up until after this incident. That one's always one that stands out with me when it comes to this. I think it's mind blowing that they're just not like he wasn't a janitor somewhere or anything like that. You guys know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it interesting that he claims to have master's degree from Massachusetts Institute of Technology in California, but there's no record of that. I find that very interesting.
It's almost like he just pops up out of thin air, knowing the things that he does. I mean, the only thing I was able to find was like one newspaper clipping that he put like a jet engine onto a car. Like, I mean, whether or not he went to college, that in itself is fucking impressive. Because I'm not even doing any wires on a jet engine. Like, I have no idea how something like that would even work. You know what I mean?
Word.
That is very cool, though. I mean, about that a car with a jet engine, that thing would fly.
Meow.
No kidding. Yeah, even in a documentary, it was showing that he had like a bicycle and he's got like a rocket on the bicycle, just like your regular pedal bicycle. He's fucking putting a rocket onto it, son of a bitch. You know what I mean? There is also one thing that really stands out with him that makes me believe his story is that this element 115 thing is it's a element that came that he first mentioned in the early 1990s when he first came out, and later it discovered by a joint team of Russian and American scientists at the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research in Russia. That it was discovered in 2003 and renamed in 2016 to Moscovium.
Moscovium.
I get closer that time.
Yeah.
Moscovium. Okay, I got a little bit closer that time. But now that is what it's renamed, and that's what it's called now. He claims that this element is a must for the propulsion system that he was working on in Area 50. Oh, not Area 51, but Site S4, and that's pretty mind blowing to me. Like that, he's going to mention it first in like 1990, and then whatever 13 years later, it becomes into fruition. You know what I mean? That's pretty crazy.
Hmm.
I mean, what do you think, Nick?
It is pretty interesting to say the least. I mean, for a guy with supposedly his credentials, coming up with stuff like that is pretty amazing. I didn't really do too much research on that part of his biography, so to speak, but yeah, I do find it interesting, to say the least. I really do.
John, you actually know way more about this kind of stuff than me and Nick could even like begin to try to talk about. Is this something that like he could have just randomly guessed or gotten lucky or anything like that?
Uh, Not really, no. I mean, it's worth pointing out that its discovery actually came from synthesis. Like they more or less figure or found it by making it on accident, for lack of a better word. Although that's broadly reductive. Don't take that as gospel. But the discovery of a new element or synthesizing a new element is something that happens. Uh, I don't want to say regularly, but it's not exactly. It's not uncommon.
Okay, I got a quick question for both of you,
Hmm.
and especially for the listeners, so they know who believes him. Is there Andrew? I assume you do. What's your give on that?
Uh, I'm I'm actually on the bubble with that one. Just because I've been fooled so many times in the past with conspiracy theories of, I've always loved them and I've grown up believing in them so fucking easily, and then looking like an idiot, you know. So I'm still on the bubble when it comes to Bob Lazar. I just try to stick to the actual facts of things he said that just seem very coincidental. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. What
Hmm.
about you, John?
But yes or no on that, I couldn't do that.
Uh, I'm gonna have to go with no because like if this was something super serious, they would have just he would have been dead, gone, not really had a chance to talk about it. Likewise, he would have been under if this was, super serial guys, then that's it. I honestly don't think he'd have a chance to come out and talk about that.
Okay.
I'd like to point out that he came out like under a secret identity, and I don't think they found out yet that it was him. But just can't go chopping off every single person that like that's coming out with a conspiracy. You know what I mean?
I agree.
I mean, I see where you're coming from, though.
I do. I'm on the fence about it. Do I believe him? Yeah, to an extent. I just do believe that some things, and I'm not, pinpointing one or two, but I do believe that some things may be exaggerated. I think that is a great possibility.
One thing I can say from about what John just said is that he didn't have any hard evidence. It's not like this. He's like Jeffrey Epstein, where he actually had hard evidence where he could have put people away and proven this. You know, like when he first came out, people were pretty like, how they usually are, tin hat kind of guy, he's a tinfoil hat kind of guy. They just pretty much like crossed him off as insane or you know what I mean, or he's crazy. That's the reason why the story doesn't get talked about much. So that could be a reason why they didn't decide to do that.
Hmm.
Could be. That's a good point. Good point.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the point on why I'm kind of on the fence about it. I mean, not one shred of real evidence to suggest that he's telling the truth on many things, not just one or two. But again, I don't doubt that some of it may be true. I don't doubt that, I'm sure. But again, to what extent is what I question.
I can understand that. He's still the the element 115 thing is an obvious one. There is another thing that he was talking about on the documentary and the podcast with Joe Rogan is that there's a machine that would take X-rays or something like that inside his hand because each one of our hand bones are unique in our fingers and they're just like fingerprints. And he would describe it earlier in the 1990s when he was doing his first interviews, and then he went away for a while. And evidently, when he did the podcast, or not the podcast, but they did the documentary, the guy that was directing it showed him a picture and asked him if this was it. And like, I guess they captured it on camera. He went bonkers, and he was like, "Yeah, this is it. I haven't seen it in years." And that's not. It wasn't something that came out until later, until like 2005 or 2006, I believe.
Hmm.
That's interesting too. For that long ago for that type of technology, that's pretty well advanced in that time era.
Yeah, something like that definitely is.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of throws a little bit into question too, because like unless they had a human actually, with a copy of his hand X-ray and stuff like that, it's unlikely that computers at that point would have been able to do successful identification like that, especially um, for as many points of the comparison there would need to be, because you figure there's like what, 26 bones in the hand. I don't recall the exact number, but that's a lot of points of comparison for a computer.
That kind of. Think about it on an everyday basis. That seems like a lot to compare just for an average human being too, or even a human being and that does that for a living. To go over that information every single day as you walk in and out the door. That's a lot.
He did complain about it breaking down a lot too.
Right.
John, what year do you think we would have had a computer that could have did that?
Early 2000s at the earliest, honestly. Like computers back in the 80s, you figure just the average X-ray is probably, or at least in file size, is probably on the order of a couple of megabytes, which that's not shit nowadays. You literally download, a couple hundred megabytes just looking on an average day of web browsing. But back in the day, yeah, that would have been a lot. That would have taken significant storage space.
I can understand that. Another thing about this story that I would like to point out is that at one point in time, his wife at the time had an affair on him, and when she did that, they started becoming suspicious about Bob. And once they started becoming suspicious, they started following him more. And it's actually how one of the ways he got caught is that one Wednesday, it wasn't actually Wednesday prior to it. He told his close friends that what he was actually doing, and none of them believed him. And I think he knew the flight patterns that they would take to do the test runs in the UFO, so he took them out one Wednesday to see. And they, of course, videotaped it, and you can see that videotape on YouTube if anybody wishes to look it up. And the following week, I believe, after that, or a couple weeks after, he wanted to go out and show him again, and that's exactly how he got caught. Now, the one of the reasons why I'm saying this is I like how what you said is that if the U.S. government did catch you and your friends doing some shady stuff around a really protected site, and they let you go, they either think the world's going to think you're completely crazy or they're really stupid.
That's a real big secret to just let someone, or I should say, for the information that he had or has. It's a big secret to just go off on a whim. Say people will just think he's stupid. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a philosophy in the intelligence community of just hiding in plain sight. Like, this isn't directly related, but when it came to the discovery of quantum physics, scientists on the board there said, okay, or I don't remember the names, and frankly, I should be ashamed of myself. But putting that aside, the quote I do remember though is, quote unquote, "We all think you're crazy. Now we have to find out if it's crazy enough to be true."
Like that.
And that's coming out and just saying, "Oh, I was working on an alien spacecraft, this, that, and the third." It sounds unfeasible, just right off the rip. So it's just kind of like one of those, how much traction is this really going to get?
I would agree to that nowadays, but back then when this started blowing up, I just don't think that they would just say, you know what, everybody will think you're stupid and crazy, so we'll just let you go. That's I don't know. I honestly, I don't know.
Right.
Uh,
Well, and then the argument what John was just saying, in fact, I think it would have been harder for people to believe his story back in the day because people's imagination when it came to technology just wasn't as far as it is today.
That's true.
Back then, if you tell people that, hey, we're going to be controlling your car through your phone, people would have looked at you like you're insane.
That's true, but there's also talk and conspiracies of the government's been hiding, well advanced technology for many, many years. And I mean, think of, this is basically my conspiracy theory. I'll jump ahead here about Area 51. There's speculations that they had like lasers and, just energy weapons that, that are far well advanced than you could even fathom. You know what I mean? So is it
Oh,
possible they
that
had
conspiracy
back
too.
then? You know?
I
uh,
agree that it is.
Mhm.
When it comes to Bob Lazar, it's that element 115 that like really makes the story stand out, and that in the machine that I told you about. Um, when I watch him live on the documentary, and when I watch him on the Joe Rogan Experience, from my own opinion, he looks like a guy that's given like it just being honest. You know what I mean? When he first came out, his life like went to fucking hell. It obviously cost him his career if you believe what he said he was doing, but at the same time, it cost him his marriage. It didn't sound like he had like a fucking fun time with this shit. And then he the guy that did the documentary, they kind of had to like beg him to basically do the documentary, and Joe Rogan basically had to beg him to get on there in the podcast. But that's all he's done, and as far as I know, he's not really out there on like ancient aliens doing interviews and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
he
Mhm.
just kind of came out and doesn't want any of the hype.
Or he's scared.
Excuse me.
It
Well,
also just sounds like a guy that he just sounds like he doesn't even want to deal with this shit anymore. You know what I mean? Like when I see him on that Joe Rogan podcast, it's just like people stop emailing me questions. He's like, I don't got all the answers for you. He's like, he claims to only worked inside like one little room and worked on just the propulsion system of the UFOs. Claims that like I think once or twice that they took him to actually view this UFO that they were working on, but he's like he says he's gotten very few like glimpses of anything in there. And all the UFO people are just asking questions away, and he just claims he doesn't have the answer to. Now, a lot of other guys that have come out that have obviously been crazy and completely making up stories, they seem like guys to me. They pretty much have an answer for everything. You know what I mean?
mm,
Yeah. Those are the ones that you're more skeptic about than anything. I mean, the ones that have no actual experience dealing with stuff like that or any kind of facility like that to come out and have answers that you and I could barely even comprehend. I don't know.
I actually I do have a question about this because it's something that really just kind of popped into my head. Okay, he says he's working on the propulsion system. Was this removed or because either they took it off the UFO or he was working around the UFO?
Though he goes into pretty great detail about it. Actually, he even claims that it was removed. To answer your question, yeah, it was removed from the UFO. He claims in that they can mess with it enough to make it do like tricky little things. Like he claimed that they were able to turn it on,
Hmm.
and he is like that feeling you get when you try to like put two magnets together or a positive and they won't go together. He
Right.
claims that when he goes to go to touch it with his hand, it's doing that. It's pushing his hand away, almost like it's got an anti-gravity thing to it. No. I would like to point out I have fucking no idea what the hell I'm talking about when it comes to that. Nothing whatsoever. He is a lot better at explaining than I am. So if I were like anybody listening to this, I would just go watch Bob Lazar explain it himself.
Mm, oh,
Yeah.
that actually does and lend a little bit of credence to it, I guess, because like Uh, magnetic repulsion is a thing. If you just spin up a strong enough magnetic field, it doesn't matter if it's iron or not, it will actually just repel everything. And it's long been theorized that if we were to try and use any kind of like antimatter drive, since you can't contain antimatter using matter because otherwise it would just go um, that you would need to use magnetic containment traps on it.
Hmm.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. I'm not a scientist by any means, nor am I an expert. So it's you start saying antimatter or this and that, I lose focus because I really don't.
Yeah, basically same here. That's
It
the
should
reason
be.
why I'm.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, John.
I just it should be
Go ahead,
stated
John.
that we're not experts on anything. We just we know some shit.
Bits and pieces here and there.
Yeah, I don't even know those bits and pieces that he just explained. So.
Some more than others, then.
Well, like I said, that was my get out of jail free card, which just go watch Bob Lazar explain it because he definitely does it a lot better than I do. I've heard the guy explain it 3 times and I still can't repeat what he said, so I'm not gonna pretend to.
Absolutely, absolutely.
What are you guys' wrap up thoughts about Bob Lazar? Let me hear some final thoughts on it.
John, you go first.
Plausible but unlikely. And when I say plausible, I mean, in the sense that any event, no matter how unlikely, given enough time, will eventually happen.
I like the way that was put.
I'm going to take that as a win at my end. What about you, Nick? Let me hear what you think.
I'm on the same fence as John, and like I said earlier, I do believe some of the things he says. Now, to what degree is unknown. I just believe that some things may be exaggerated, such as he's seen something that may or may not identify as an alien or an aircraft, and he kind of put his own spin on it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, because I'm actually one that does believe in aliens and UFOs. However, I just don't know if his stories are, legitimate.
That's the thing when it comes. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just stating that, especially with no shred of evidence. And I mean, it's hard to just go off of just someone's word, especially nowadays. I'm sure everybody knows that.
Oh, that comes in, and happens with each and everybody's things on the UFOs. I mean, the only shred of evidence he really has is what most people usually have, and that's video. I mean, he does have that video where he's shooting the UFO spinning about, and if you watch the video, whatever it is that the videotaping, it's definitely not something I knew that existed in 1989 when it happened. So.
Right.
That's a pretty cool video to watch through. I am gonna pass over to Nick because that sounds like a perfect way to lead into the next conspiracy theory. Is go from S4 site to the Area 51. So take it away, Nick.
Yes, I did my conspiracy regarding Area 51, and there's a couple categories in Area 51 I kind of ought to cover. One of the main ones is the advanced weapons that are supposedly available and worked on at these facilities. Some say, and I do mean some, I don't have any names for you, unfortunately, but some say there's weapons that can shoot lasers, that can vaporize somebody. There's even talk about time travel gadgets. What's your opinions on that?
Hey, what you got, John?
No and hard no.
That's the reason why I passed it to John first. Why no, John?
Okay. Energy weapons. The only use in an energy weapon is presently. Now, the only use an energy weapon or a laser really has is if you're trying to deliver heat to a very specific point. Just because of the way matter is, in order to shoot a laser at something that would actually vaporize, say a human body or something, you would need to shoot something on the order of a full day's worth of sunlight on the entire planet within the space of, let's just say generously, a second. And time travel, well, let me just put it this way. Time travel is possible. We're all doing it right now. But no, moving forward in times, that's easy. All you have to do is sit and fucking wait. Moving backwards in time, theoretically impossible.
That kind of threw me off, but that makes sense.
It does make sense. I don't really agree with the time traveling thing, but I don't think it's out of the question to have some kind of laser technology that can vaporize. Now, I don't mean necessarily humans, but just in general, vaporize some kind of objects. I don't think that's out of the question, do you?
Uh, yes, I do think that's out of the question because that's it. Okay, a human-sized object is actually a good comparison because we're mostly water, so any kind of instantaneous transfer of heat energy is actually going to cause all the water in our body to flash steam, which would actually result in not vaporization, but chunkifying, as the non-water bearing components of our biology goes from the steam exploding. Um, I also, it's worth asking, okay, what's the point of vaporizing anything that isn't human sized?
I would agree, but that might just take time to develop. I mean, I don't really necessarily believe that it's there now, but
Mhm.
I do believe, it's not impossible to create some kind of laser component that can vaporize, whether it be an object or a human. I don't think that's out of the question.
I mean,
Unless
didn't
we,
they?
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
Uh, um, unless we are getting to the point where we're using, small nuclear or fusion reactors in order to power weapons, anything that you could do with a laser is better off just done with a gun. Uh, Case in point, instead of trying to shoot a laser at something, why don't you just shoot a faster bullet?
Hold up, don't they use lasers to take out incoming missiles nowadays?
They do because it can intercept the missile, and what they're doing is they're targeting a very specific point on the missile. Basically, they're trying to either fry the detonator so that way it explodes over air, or that's it. They're just trying to actually cause it to detonate before it hits the target.
So are
I
you
still,
questioning? Oh, sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
I still don't think like futuristic weapons is really out of the question. It's something that would have at Area 51. Um, I mean, I could kind of see what you're talking about, like lasers, but wouldn't there be other kind of things that would be futuristic weapons they could be working on, Nick?
I do, which is why I did my conspiracy regarding this, is because I do believe that is not a far-fetched thing. I believe that's something that's probably been worked on for many, many years, including some sort of laser that can vaporize a car or a human being. But my biggest one I don't believe in is the time travel gadgets. That's when I seen it. I was pretty flabbergasted that that was really a speculation, and I don't agree with it. What about you, Andrew? Do you kind of they may have something along those lines?
What do you think, John?
Well, I gave my opinion. No and hard no. You weigh in.
I said, Andrew, what do you think about the time traveling?
Oh, my apologies. Misheard you. Um, I don't know about the time traveling thing. I would have agreed with you on the lasers until I heard John give his spiel. My opinion kind of might have changed after that. I don't know anything about lasers, but I definitely do think that Area 51 has been reverse engineering things for a long time. I mean, you go up to where were we before, like
Excuse me.
1940? You know what I mean? How long did it take us as human beings in civilization to get up to the point in 1940? Then we go from 1940 to where we're at now. It's like not even 100 years later. It's just fucking mind blowing. I mean, we went from unable to even have cars, unable to have electric cars to we're starting cars with our phones now, and it hasn't even been 100 years. Like this technology leap that we've done in our human race is just something that's never been seen before. And reverse engineering would just perfectly explain that away, I think.
There is one more type of, I'm not going to say weapon in general, but there is speculations that in Area 51 there's gadgets or just some kind of component that can possibly control the weather. I completely disagree with this. It's just something I read, and I wanted to hear your guys' opinion on it.
Uh,
I don't think it's something. I don't know about control the weather, but maybe manipulate it. I don't think that would be too much out of the question. But at the same time, I don't fucking know jack shit about that stuff.
John, what about you?
I would like to give a warning to you and the other listeners. If you're wearing a headset, please turn your volume down now. No.
I agree with John. I mean, I don't. And to elaborate on that, when Andrew say manipulate weather, I don't see that.
No.
No. When I say hold up, let me defend
No.
myself real quick. When I say manipulate, I don't mean control. I mean like make it rain a little bit heavier than it was gunned to originally. That's it.
Oh, we can do
I
that
said
now.
manipulate.
Hey,
See?
like I was about to say, I agree
So why
with
is
you
this so funny?
manipulating the weather to some sense, but I don't believe that anybody can control Mother Nature. That's a whole different ballgame. I don't believe it. I don't agree with it, and the things that I read about it, I completely just don't see eye to eye with it. But there are speculations of it that are involved with Area 51. I couldn't believe I actually read that, but lo and behold, it is there. Another thing that I wanted to kind of go over and hear your guys' opinions on.
I'm sorry, but that was probably the dumbest one. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
hey man, I see it and I just want to hear about it. That's all.
I know, but
hey, I would like
sorry,
to point out there were like true things about Area 51 that eventually did become what I mean. Our stealth bomber was tested there. You know what I mean? And it was at the point in time that it was being tested there. It was a conspiracy that we did have a stealth bomber there that looked like that. And sure enough, we come out with it. You know what I mean? There is things about Area 51 that were true.
Well, here's other speculations regarding UFO sightings. In 1954, Eisenhower authorized a development of high-altitude recon aircraft. They called it Project Aquatone. Basically, the U-2 aircrafts, and I don't know really much about them other than what I read, very basic on it, but at that time, during that era, they could fly up higher than any aircraft in existence, such as your average military aircrafts that can travel up to about 40,000 feet altitude. But the U-2 can go all the way up to 60,000. So some say when it comes to the UFO sightings around Area 51 that when this project began, which is when the sightings really started to pick up, that it was just the U-2 aircrafts up there so high and the tiny specks of them, people were thinking they were UFOs.
I believe that.
It makes sense. It kind of does to an extent. Again, I believe in aliens and, of course, UFOs as well. So, but it does make sense on, back then and during that time era, why everybody was kind of freaking out, especially when it comes to the crash in Roswell in New Mexico. And there's also speculations that in that crash, military for the Area 51 taking aliens, keeping them hostages, and then dissecting them. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think I believe that too much. What do you guys think?
I actually got a good one about this, so I'll let John give his opinion first.
If the alien was already dead, then yeah, we would probably dissect them and try and run, analysis on their tissues or something. If the alien was alive, probably just kill it and then do that. Because let's face it, the cadaver is more useful to us rather than the actual living being. Or, well, it would have been at that time.
Okay.
Who says it's really even alien? Couldn't it just be like a sentient robot?
Well, I mean, it's still technically an alien.
Alien
just means not from this planet. Extraterrestrial.
What about you, Andrew? You said you had something to elaborate on when it comes to that, so let's see.
Oh, it's actually something pretty cool that I've learned recently about this. Is she was actually on Joe Rogan Experience. I'm sorry, people, I keep mentioning it. It's just like this podcast, so I listen to a lot. But she can. What's that?
Nothing.
Yeah, but she was actually on Joe Rogan Experience, and she came out and said that she had a whistleblower who's previously died, but he claims that the whole Roswell incident was actually staged by Joseph Stalin to try to distract the human population, and that the aliens were actually midgets that were, or small people, if you have, that were operated on to look like aliens.
Just to interject real quick, you've said she a couple of times. Would you care to elaborate who she is?
I don't have her name right on hand. I'd have to look it up. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's something I was actually just reminded about it when Nick brought it up. The alien crash.
I found that interesting because think about it. Let's say it was true to some degree. To suggest that we can just take an alien hostage, especially with far advanced technology that they have, I don't think it would be that simple. Nor do I think that the alien would just be like, okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
You know what I mean? I don't know about that. So it's a little far fetched to me. I don't think it's out of the question that they do experiments regarding like UFO aircrafts that they've found or shot down or what have you. But I just don't believe that they've ever actually caught a physical alien before. It's not like catching a freaking raccoon or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've always had one problem with this. As when when I was a kid and I've read stuff about this, like it had me hooked, line, and sinker. I mean, without a doubt. But when I've gotten older and I've really thought about this objectively, is that we're talking about an alien species that it's at least what 200 years, 300 years ahead of us technologically. Let's be honest, probably even further than that. And we just expected to believe that they came here and they crashed. Like when they master space flight, you know what I mean? Like I don't make sense. Like we ain't. If we make it to Mars, like if Elon Musk makes it to Mars, I don't see him crashing. You know what I mean? At least in my opinion.
I agree 100%. I think it's a little far fetched that we have, especially back then in that time era, that we just ganked an alien out of a spacecraft and said, "Hey, you're coming with us." We debo this shit. I don't think it went down like that. And I don't think that's possible. Honestly, really.
I mean, you're talking about something that's so far ahead. It'd be like us fighting people from like the 1600s. Like it's not even a fight.
That's yeah. Like that's very well said, by the way, Andrew. That's exactly my point. Very well said. Very well said.
I guess just to play the devil's advocate a little bit here, it's worth pointing out that no amount of excuse me, no amount of technology prevents fuck ups. No amount of technology will prevent things from just going wrong. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't believe any of this shit happened, but by the same token, shit happens. And now I don't think we would have ended up taking one hostage alive, but the potential that something went wrong on the ship that when they were in low orbit or something and crash land on Roswell, I mean, it's not entirely without or beyond the realm of possibility.
But let's look at it like this: like if alien life did come here, it would have to be outside of this galaxy, at least the solar system, right? Maybe even outside the galaxy. And how far further are we down the line from mastering being able to travel that far? Roughly.
I would say, just given the growth of technology, it's not completely unreasonable that we'd be able to physically visit Pluto by 2100. Excuse me, sorry.
Wow, you believe that quick, huh?
Yeah, like there are some initial hurdles when it comes to space travel, but there are a lot of promises with it, a lot of different engine types. Because the biggest thing we have to figure out now is the mass to fuel ratio. Like, in order to go further, you have to carry more gas. But in order to carry more gas, you have to have a bigger rocket, which takes more gas. You see how this keeps becoming a problem? And that's actually why we use booster rockets, because they're just disposable things that, okay, after they do their job, they get the fuck out of the way to lighten up the spacecraft.
Sense.
I could see that happening. Now, I don't know if I agree with the next 80 years or so. That's a possibility because that's a little far out there. I mean, we've just got to the moon, and there's really no speculation that we've gone past the moon, from my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, please.
Manned spaceflight? No.
I assume you're going to elaborate on what you mean by that.
Okay, we've sent probes and stuff, Voyager, not Apollo, but we have shot things out of the solar system or out past the moon. In fact, I think one of the probes we launched like way back recently actually just left the solar system.
Voyager 1.
Yeah. That's actually outside the solar system now. We have shot, things out to Mars and Jupiter to take pictures and shit. But as far as, a manned space flight, no. Like Mars would be the furthest any human has traveled in terms of space.
I think our major problem getting to Mars is just like the asteroid belt, being able to get past it, and it's also returning. Am I right?
Yeah, getting back is the problem because that's it. If you have to hold fuel for a return trip, plus not to mention, I think the trip to Mars itself is what, 7, 8 months? I actually don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, like getting to Mars, there are a lot of problems that need solving first.
That's actually a
Didn't
really
even think about.
very long time. Very long time. I think it's longer than a lot of people would actually even think of. Longer than I thought, by the way. Longer than I thought. I do have another quick question for you guys.
Hmm.
When it comes to security breaches, so to speak, now and I don't have a list with me of how many people have ever worked at Area 51, nor have I ever even looked that up. But with all the people that have worked and have done any sort of contracting with that facility, do you guys really believe that it's out of the question that nobody would come out, other than the select few that have, with information or evidence to suggest any of this is possible when it comes to aliens, energy weapons, time traveling, weather controlling? I mean, anything like this. I mean, would you even agree that everybody that has ever even went to that facility, touched that facility, worked at that facility, they're all just keeping their mouth shut? I don't think that. I don't think that's true. I think if these things were really happening, somebody would come out. There's too many people that have worked there, contracted there, etc. I don't think every one of them is just on the hush and hush. What do you think?
Oh, I like how you point out like the aliens and stuff because it really, I mean, depends on what these contractor people or whoever's working inside Area 51 actually seen. I mean, we're talking about like stealth bombers. I think something like that when they came out and said it's true. Now, if you like you said, you're talking about UFOs and stuff, and I'll have to find that the truth is usually in the middle. You know what I mean? Like you got your extremists that say that they're altering time and reality in Area 51, and you got your people that saying it's nothing happening. I wouldn't find it too out that like maybe they do have something there. Maybe they found whatever like a little spaceship that aliens were using and it just happened to leave because they didn't need it anymore. And what if they did find that? I don't find that far out of the question. But I want to believe in this shit. You know
I
what I
do
mean?
too,
So I'm
by the way.
biased.
I do too, by the way. I really, really do. Now, there's some of the things that are just far fetched, and I brought them up during this podcast just because there are actual speculations of this, not just by one or two, by a group of individuals, and it's got some pretty good volume of these individuals too. Many people are suggesting that the government in Area 51, or even all over the government, have the ability to control weather, or have some sort of time traveling gadgets, or some serious type of energy weapons that are like far advanced than we can even fathom at this point. I want to believe it, but again, it's somewhere in the middle. I do believe. I like the way you put that, Andrew. I don't believe that it's 100% because you got extremists, and then you got people that just won't listen to reason. So I do believe that there's a happy middle there, and I just don't know what it is. I agree with a lot of the things that are said, especially when it comes to alien aircrafts and just things on the hush and hush. I mean, and this goes back to our first episode, or even possibly our second episode of the podcast. People overall are really dumb and they're panicking. The person's very smart, so the government will not release this type of information until absolutely necessary. Whether you agree or disagree, again, history speaks for itself. People just are panicky and just stupid. That's just the way it is. So.
Mm.
What about you, John? Do you think there could be a person out there that's actually telling the truth and some of this shit could be real?
Uh, One thing that pops into mind that Nick mentioned is that, for or for any and all the people who have actually, been on site and worked on things and stuff like that, could all of them really just being hush hush? I would like to point out a point of comparison for actually the CIA, or well, I should say the American intelligence community in general. For all the people that have been in and out of that and worked in and out of that, the only real whistleblower that we could name, or any person that has worked in it, is Edward Snowden. And so, like the fact that there are only a few people coming out and saying shit, uh, it kind of leads credence to it because that's it. Like you said, on average, a person is smart, and we're all selfish to a certain point. Like if shutting up means, I get a good paycheck and, my family isn't in danger or anything, fuck it. I'll have that sort of Damocles hanging over my head. Uh, it takes a certain type of person to blow the whistle and talk about shit. That
Let me
said,
elaborate on what you. Let me elaborate on what you just said. I don't mean to interrupt you, John, but
mhm,
just the CIA is very big. I mean, there's stations, offices, and controlments all over the world, just about, right? We can all agree
right.
to that. So to suggest that everybody in the CIA has the same information or has the ability to see this information, I don't think that's possible because in different offices they run different things. So
Mhm,
majority of your individuals in the CIA, unlike Eric Snowden, that came out with stuff like this, again, I don't think everybody has the ability or has had the ability to witness anything of this nature, especially conspiracy like.
mm,
But if you're thinking Area 51, now yes, it's a very big facility, but it's more enclosed. I mean, there's only so many places you can put a goddamn UFO. Give me a
right.
break, right? There's only so many places you can keep aliens hostage or make these energy weapons in a facility that is Area 51. It's a lot more smaller, condensed area to keep all of this on the hush hush, except for a select few of people. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard for me to believe. So I have a hard time believing that not more people have come out about this, which leads to another question: is it true or is it false? You know what I mean?
Mm.
Hello,
Well,
I would like to point out that I do think wholeheartedly if there is anything ever at Area 51 to deal with anything with aliens, that shit is long gone. It is not an Area 51 anymore. Area 51's got way too much attention to it. I mean, you'd have to be a dumbass leader to, like, oh, our UFOs and stuff are here. People are starting to find out about Area 51. Fuck it, just leave it here. You know what I mean? They'd have moved it. I think that if there is stuff like that, it's probably in a site that nobody really knows about right now.
Like this shit you hear. I should say we've heard over the last couple of years with Storm or Raid Area 51. Like
oh yeah,
3 million people or 2 million people signed up for that, and who went? You
fucking
know what
no
I mean?
one.
Who actually
Yeah,
did it? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. It's so funny.
Any final thoughts on Area 51, Nick?
Um, Not much. I just, encourage everybody to do their own research, come up with their own opinions, look at, some facts and go from there. I would like everybody to, kind of look at it because it is something that's, very big in conspiracies. So that's one of the biggest ones for me, at least. And I'm not too big into conspiracy theories, by the way. I'm really not because I think a lot of them are just kind of bullshit, people rambling and, whether they were taking too much drugs or fucking whatever the case may have been. I think a lot of the, conspiracy theories are just that bullshit. But Area 51 is the one that's kind of always interested me into kind of doing more research in because I don't think that all of it is out of the question. I think it's very possible that many of the things that we discussed about Area 51 is 100% possible. What about you, John?
Uh, I'm of the opinion that maybe instead of worrying about our government doing, shady shit with extraterrestrials, maybe we should worry about the shady shit that they're doing, to just plain old folk.
That I
Amen
agree
to
with.
that.
I
Like,
agree with that.
So now let's fast forward, John, to your conspiracy. Man, who did you decide to do it on and what?
uh, I did not decide to do it on a person, but and this has the trappings of a great conspiracy theory. I decided to do mine on the uh, Polybius urban legend, or well, urban legends conspiracy theory. The difference, I call it a conspiracy theory because the government is highly indicted in what happened.
Okay.
It's when you think that we weren't going to talk about video games this episode.
Oh, I'm gonna find a way to sneak it in. I'm
I
gonna
was
find a
just
way
going
Yeah,
to
to
yeah.
say
sneak it in.
for everybody that doesn't know what this is actually about, because I'm sure I didn't know until you brought it up in last episode. I had to do some research on it myself,
Right.
but I'm assuming everybody doesn't really know too much about it. So why don't you tell everybody what that actually is?
All right. Polybius is okay. The rumor is that it was a video game released in a or released by the government and an unnamed arcade in Portland, Oregon, back in the 80s. The suggestion or what the conspiracy theory suggests is that playing the game caused intense psychoactive effects in the player, and it also had addictive things. It was kind of like doing LSD, but in video game form. Um, the reason why it's shady is that's it. People were having vivid nightmares, just completely losing their shit after playing the game. There were also supposed men in black coming and collecting data from the machine. And it's worth pointing out that there are no existing cabinets. There are no existing PCB boards, which are what the game is actually ran on. Any There's no physical evidence of this ever happening, but it's gained such traction, kind of, in gaming pop culture that, there are reproductions and a fair amount of investigation that's actually gone into this.
Okay. Quick question, just so everybody understands. Do you believe it? Do you not believe it? Is this something that you believe in, that was a conspiracy theory, or do you think this was all just bullshit?
Half and half. Like, this is one that I want to believe, but again, you know, a rational person has to point at the complete lack of evidence and then ask, that's it, did it ever really happen if we can't prove it?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I agree. It is all well to mention is the research I was doing. I did come across an article regarding Stephen Roach. He was one of the original programmers, so SAG is what he claimed.
Right.
And he did claim that they developed the game with tense, cutting-edge graphics for the time that they created it, and it gave a boy, and it didn't really give any information on the actual name of the person or age or anything like that. But he had experienced epileptic seizures while playing. And again, Stephen Roach, the guy that claimed all this, gave no evidence towards this. Did you read that?
Yeah, I did hear about that, and it's worth pointing out that the game is supposedly supposed to have featured, flashing strobing lights and intense colors for the era. So, the fact that somebody could have had an epileptic seizure from it is not far-fetched in the least, especially if they were already predisposed to epilepsy.
Agreed. Andrew, what are your thoughts?
You get warnings nowadays on video games that warn you about people with epilepsy in their past before you even play them. I think every Assassin's Creed game has got a warning for you, but I when I looked this up and I tried to do some research into it, I really could not find much beyond the urban legend. There is a documentary that is on YouTube that you can watch, but I've got to watch it, and I actually might after this because it sounds interesting. I wouldn't put it past the government making an arcade game to see if they could test on people's psychology or anything like that. Even if it isn't Polybius, I could see it being just damn near anything else. Like, I would not put it past the government to actually do this. But to say if I think this is real or not, I don't have enough information in front of me to actually say yes or no.
Let me throw mine out there. It's not that I agree that it's that they did it, but I don't think it's out of the question that the government had tried to come up with some kind of experiment to see if they can mind alter or something of that nature, and we were just guinea pigs. I don't think that's out of the question either.
There is some actually evidence that the government has done things like this, and I will mention it later after we're done talking about Polybius. But when I was reading about Polybius on the urban legends on the things online, it kind of gave me that what's that Black Mirror episode on Netflix that's like this?
I don't know.
I couldn't tell you. I don't watch it.
Yeah. There's a Black Mirror movie that they made that was supposed to be interaction, and it was basically about a game maker. But I don't know. It just gave me that kind of vibes, like creepy kind of vibe to it. I mean, I could definitely see the why people like this theory so much.
Now, one thing I want to point out as well is the Men in Black thing. When they say, I seen that like quite a few times as I was researching this. I don't know what they really meant by Men in Black, whether it was just Men in Black suits like data, or they really meant like Men in Black like the movie. I don't know. I don't know how far-fetched that is, but I don't know about all that.
I would like I said, if I had more evidence in front of me, this is definitely something that I want to believe in. You know what I mean? Like, it just sounds cool.
There
I could
are
agree with that.
a couple of things that lend it massive air quotes, but credence. One, this or this conspiracy theory is based around the time when the government was actively working with psychedelic elements like LSD, shit like that, in terms of for interrogation purposes. It's worth pointing out that all of the symptoms described by those who played the games are relatable back to a bad LSD trip, and it's easy enough to say, coat something in LSD resin or something that it just feels like, oh, it's kind of slimy because somebody else was playing on it. It's not something the average user of an arcade machine would really think about. Um, like
When I
there,
looked this up, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
there's it's not outside the realm of possibility that they would have also tried to use some sort of image or optical neural imprinting like that, subliminal messages, shit like that. It's not out of the question that they would think, okay, can we do these strobing lights and shit like that to help crack somebody who's currently being interrogated.
No, I agree with you 100%. I wouldn't put it past them. In fact, I would be more inclined to believe it.
That's
Mm,
one thing that makes me want to believe in this is for the fact that from what I read, this was all, if it is real, this was all just an experiment so they could use this on enemy to gain an advantage, especially when they're interrogating, etc. Right?
mm.
So if you look at it that way, is it very plausible? Is it very possible? And does it make sense? Yeah. Does it make sense that you use us as a guinea pig or just average society? No, but I mean, I wouldn't put it past the government to do that. No, not at all.
Still, it's not the most it's not the most absurd conspiracy theory I've ever heard. I'd guarantee you that. Like, it's far from it.
I think the most absurd one we've ever heard is the Earth is flat. That's the only absurd one I've ever heard.
Earth is a sphere, circular.
Oh my goodness gracious, those flat earthers! I don't even want to feed. I don't even want to give them attention, to be honest. That just gives me a headache.
You're right.
Planets round,
All
dog.
right,
Learn how gravity works.
any final thoughts on Polybius, fellas?
John?
Uh, that's it. I want to believe it. And I have to admit that as far as any other conspiracy theory I've heard, granted, the Bob Lazar and the Area 51, well, Bob Lazar specifically, the controlling the weather and the energy weapons, that's just fantasy. No offense, but excuse me, God.
I-
Uh, but
Here, I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
oh, but uh, like there's a lot to Polybius that lends it enough credibility, I guess. Again, massive air quotes. That it's a fascinating idea, and as someone like me who's invested in video games, it's one of those fun things that just it's a what if question. What if?
Guilty pleasure.
Guilty pleasure, yeah.
I love that phrase. All right. I do have here, fellas, to help defend each and every one of our arguments for our conspiracy theories that we just presented. I have a list in front of me of 5 conspiracy theories that were ended up being true.
Mm.
They're very short. They're very direct. If anybody has more questions about these, or you guys yourself or the listeners, I would just try to do research into it yourself. I just thought that if we're going to talk about conspiracy theories to make us all look a little less tinfoil hatty, to try to read off ones that are actually true at one point in time. Number 1, the U.S. Navy fired at a North Vietnamese U.S. Navy fired at North Vietnamese with torpedo boats that weren't there. What was conspiracy theories that when we were first having problems with North Vietnam, that we made up a story about boats that were getting too close to us from the North Vietnamese, and we shot them down. And it's one of the reasons why we got to further conflict with North Vietnam. But those boats that we shot at, they never existed.
Interesting.
Number two, the FBI has infiltrated, surveilled, and also discredited American politician groups and deemed them submersive by ways of J. Edgar Hoover kept busy to suppress the spread of communism in the United States under a secret program called Quintilpro. They supposedly infiltrated many different political groups to make them seem like radicalists so people would stop listening to them.
I can see that, definitely. I never read that.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely see that.
And then the third one, we got Operation Northwoods, a plan to kill innocent civilians and blame it on Cuba to help further our conflict towards Cuba. We came up with this idea after we tried the Bay of Pigs, which obviously failed miserably. So Joint Chiefs of Staff brought this plan towards higher ups and even had the signatures on it, but we never went through with it. But this was a real thing that the United States government was actually debating on doing.
Interesting.
All right, now we have Operation Mockingbird. CIA had a journalist attempt to influence public opinion and gather intelligence, and nearly went on for 3 decades. The CIA had journalists that were spreading propaganda and collecting information on U.S. Civilians. It's called Operation Mockingbird.
I definitely
Decades. Decades.
believe it.
And this one's bringing a full circle. I'm glad this is the last one because this actually kind of talks about John's conspiracy theory a little bit. But this one is called MK Ultra.
Yeah.
The CIA conducted mind control experiments on U.S. and Canadian civilians. Studies included the effects of alcohol, hypnosis, brainwashing techniques, shock and confusion drills, and it's even said that they use psychedelics.
And MK Ultra is actually referenced quite a bit, or well, depending on the sources. The sources that I used for this focused more on just the Polybius myth rather than any potential government involvement, although that was also mentioned and given some spotlight. I would like to point out, and this is a note for you guys too, if you guys could give me a list of your sources, I would definitely throw them in the video description if any of the listeners want to check up on that.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed that MK Ultra one quite a bit actually. I've heard about this before, like many times. I think that they even got movies made about it, like Men Who Stare at Goats or some shit like that. I like when John brought up one of his conspiracy theory, and I started looking into it. That was one of the things that it completely reminded me of was MK Ultra. And it happened right about the same time MK Ultra happened too. I think MK Ultra happened in the 70s, but might want to fact check me on that.
They're close enough to count.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I would like to also discuss with you guys about conspiracy theories on our effects in place in society. And I'd like to hear both of your opinions on this. Nick, where do you think conspiracy theories really come from? Why do you think conspiracy theories are a thing?
Well, as long as the government is somewhat in control, they're always going to be a thing. 100% always will be a thing. The reason why I say that is because you got your extremists out there that don't believe in governments running anything. And until said otherwise, I don't think it's ever going to die down. Now, do I believe, and this is something I said earlier, do I believe that a lot of conspiracy theories are actual factual? No, I don't. I believe a lot of them are just complete bullshit. Complete just speculation. People just come up with something. They say they've seen something, and then it just kind of snowballs, especially with social media nowadays. So conspiracy theories to me, beside the ones that we kind of spoke about, especially Area 51 and Bob Lazar, even John's, by the way, it seems very possible that the government would do something like that. And like I said, until the government stops controlling majority of the population to that degree, I don't ever believe that conspiracy theories will ever just dwindle down or go away. I think there will always be them because I do, there's anti-government people out there and they're, in full power. So I do believe that they're always going to come up with something that the government's hiding or, And you can agree or disagree. I agree with 90% of the government's just nothing but corrupt assholes. They're always in it for financial gain. So until you take the greed out of the government, I don't think we'll ever see end all that conspiracy theories.
How about you, John? Why do you think people are so quick to believe conspiracy theories?
I think we have conspiracy theories, and I think people tend to flock to them for the same reason we have religions. The human animal is just wired to try and figure shit out. It's how we managed to make it to the point where, we are today is just, okay, how does this work? How does this work? How do we, not die from this? And also, excuse me. God, I'm shitty this episode. I'm sorry, listeners. Um, it's we want to know things, and we want to try and figure things out. We want to try, and we need someone to blame for shit half the time. And the government just being a big shadowy cunt of an organization it's a prime target. And that's it. Like, why did we come up with gods? Because there was shit we couldn't explain. Why do we come up with conspiracy theories that blame the government? Because there's shit we can't explain. So it's just that collective human will of trying to grasp for answers.
I like how you said that, John. I really do like how you said that. Andrew, same question to you, sir. Well, why do you believe ongoing?
Thank you. I agree with everything that both of y'all said. I can't think of a single thing I could disagree with. Other things I would like to point out is that suspicion is always been like an evolutionary drive for human beings. Like, it's helped us survive in very hostile conditions. When we were just hunters and gatherers, if we didn't stay on our toes over suspicions, we died. That was simple as that. We got eaten by something or something else, or bitten by a snake or a spider, and so on and so forth. Just whatever ways you could think of that we could die out there. It's always been like an evolutionary trait for us to be suspect, and then those that were suspect stayed alive and produced more DNA and more children, and those of us that weren't suspect and were dumb often died, and they weren't able to spread anything. So even today, it helps us politically or even socially to be suspect of many people that we know. Don't fully trust them. It's just our natural drive to have suspicion towards anything. I think that has to do with conspiracy theories too. I think people are just right off the get or willing to suspect anything, and sometimes they get wrapped up in trying to look at all the things that they can't explain. That the things that we can explain don't no longer make sense to them. And I think that's how you get people like flat earthers and etc. I have personally looked up some explanation by psychology, and a lot of these I completely agree with. I've seen one's a need for understanding, like what John was saying, that we kind of need to understand that shit. A need for control, to feel like they have control over their life because the world's so chaotic that they can't even understand what's going on around them. A need to belong or feel special. Or my favorite one, I think gets into a lot of people, is they need to feel ahead of the curve. They need to feel like they're smarter than everybody else around them, and you guys just don't understand it and look into it, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. 100%.
But the important thing is that we don't just look at people as tinfoil hat wearers to talk about conspiracy theories, because I just named you 5 very important ones that were completely true, and people didn't want to listen to the people that are trying to tell us the truth because, conspiracy theory. Wasn't conspiracy theory a word that the FBI or CIA made up in like the 70s to make people seem cuckoo?
More than likely.
Yeah, I'm like 90% sure that's real. It's I think conspiracy theories have a very, very important topic when it comes to us politically in the United States. That it helps keeps people honest. And one conspiracy theory that I did want to bring up with you guys is, well, guilty pleasure of mine. I don't necessarily think it's true, but I gotta bring it up. Is JFK assassination? Do you guys have any opinions about this? Do you guys think there's conspiracy behind it? Let me hear what you got, Nick.
Me, first of all, do I believe it? I don't think it's out of the question. I honestly don't, nor have I done as much research on the JFK assassination as I should have to really answer that question on why. But I don't think it's out of the question that if it's true, I really don't, especially with what he was trying to fulfill and just try to implement in our system. So I don't think it's out of the question at all. Do I believe again that there's a middle part of the truth in that? Yes, because you do have your extremists that kind of go off the wall. Then you do have the ones that just completely disregard factual information. So I do believe that there's a happy medium there that will say that is true, but I haven't done much of my research on it to really give an elaboration on just the information in general. So you go ahead and take it away, John.
I guess, the question that necessarily needs to be asked is, okay, what was the overall benefit? And, there, like we've said, the government's full of corrupt assholes, shady cunts, this, that, and the third. Excuse me. Again, I'm sorry for all the coughing. I don't know what's. You wouldn't think that I'm trying to quit smoking with all the coughing I'm doing, but here we go. These things said, like the practical aspect of it, the whole second shooter, or the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald couldn't have made, the shots that he did. I think that's it.
Just
That's
complete bullshit,
perfectly
by the way.
plausible.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hey, I got some things that to say about that. Is that that's often a time a thing that's brought up about the JFK assassination. Is that I think it's something like he got off like 6 shots in 12 seconds with like an M1 rifle, and a lot of people are saying that it's hard, it's difficult. I have seen people in their 80s do it, no problem. And the distance of the shot that he made is like literally only 100 yards of that, which is not a difficult shot for any kind of marksman like him in the Marines that is a sharpshooter. The biggest thing I've ever had with the JFK assassination that people can't explain is the bullet they recovered from JFK. That bullet went into the JFK, ricocheted off of Bones, and hit the man in front of him. I can't remember his name offhand. And that bullet was recovered like damn near pristine. Like there wasn't any damage to that bullet like whatsoever. And anybody that's ever like hunted or anybody that's ever really shot a gun a few times know that when bullets hit things, man, they mushroom, they shatter, they get crushed. Like you're telling me that bullet went through two men and it came out completely unscathed. Like I don't know about that one. That just smells really fishy to me.
That sounds really fishy, to say the least, because you either have, scuffs, scrapes, like you said, mushroomed, or there's some kind of dimple in there that would believe that, it hit something solid, especially if it ricocheted off a bone. I mean, bones are very dense. Bones, the fact is I believe 100% that bullet would have at least had some kind of marking on it to suggest that it hit something,
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that bullets mushrooming or deforming it's actually by design, because if a bullet just pierces through its target, that's a whole lot of energy that's not being delivered into the target. You want the bullet to deform so that way it delivers the total load of its energy into the target. That's how you kill things. Like poking a hole in someone is and this is going to sound silly to say, but putting a hole in someone that doesn't belong is only generally lethal. Like, yes, don't get me wrong, there are difficulties with it, but what you really want to do is you want to take the full energy behind that bullet and deliver it into the target so that way, it breaks bones, it causes organ tearing, things that can't be sewed up or patched together easily. So for the bullet to be found in near perfect condition, either that bullet was made out of tungsten, in which case it wouldn't have ricocheted around or anything. It would have literally just punched a hole straight through to the concrete, or it was a plant.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, man. I definitely we do a podcast like conspiracy theories, dude. I've loved that one my entire life. I definitely had to bring it up, and I also brought it up to do a full circle to this one. Now, this one is not a conspiracy theory. It's not an urban legend. It's merely coincidence. but I just find it a mindfuck nonetheless. All right, the similarities between the Lincoln assassination, or just Abraham Lincoln in general, and Kennedy assassination, and just Kennedy in general. Uh, I personally looked up this list. This list is on a few different sites. You could basically just look it up right on Wikipedia if you really want to. But I'm just gonna gibber down the list here, and the more ones I get to, the weirder the coincidences become. Like you have Abraham Lincoln that was elected to Congress in 1846. JFK was elected to Congress in 1946. Abraham Lincoln elected president in 1860. And JFK was elected to president in 1960. Both Lincoln and Kennedy each contained seven letters, rather. Sorry. Both were concerned about civil rights. Both wives lost children while inside the White House. Both presidents were shot on a Friday. Both were shot in the head. Lincoln's secretary named Kennedy warned him not to go to the theater. Kennedy's secretary named Lincoln warned him not to go to Dallas. Both were assassinated by Southerners. Both were succeeded by Southerners. Both successors were named Johnson. Andrew Johnson, who succeeded Lincoln, was born in 1808. Lyndon Johnson, who succeeded JFK, was born in 1908. Both assassinators were both known by three names. Both names were 15 letters. Booth ran from the theater and was caught in a warehouse. Oswald ran from a warehouse and was caught in the theater. And both were assassinated assassinated before their trials.
Interesting, to say the least. Yeah, there's a lot of coincidence there, that's for sure. Definitely.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
Absolutely. And we do appreciate, Andrew, you bringing that to light and during this episode. That is very good information, because I didn't know probably 90% of that, honestly.
Yeah.
I appreciate you both letting me do this, pick this topic, and letting me do all my spiels that I wanted to do. Appreciate it to the both of you and our listeners.
Hey, man, we're all in this together. We'll cover as many topics as we want, especially anybody out there that wants us to cover a certain topic. Just, give us a comment, and we'll do our research, and maybe one day we'll have a podcast regarding that.
And it's like, I guess, kind of, not or good for the podcast, but just good in general. Like, it's good to see people impassioned about shit. And, you can say, oh, well, you're impassioned about conspiracy. Nah, dog, fuck that. If we were all a little bit more honest about the weird things that interested us, the world would be a better place, I think. Passion is good.
I agree, John. Any final thoughts there, Nick?
No, just everybody. Hopefully, you like the podcast, and please do your own research. Like John said, we're going to put some links in the description so you guys can, fact check us a little bit, and that's about it, man.
All right, thank you too for letting me choose this topic, and thank you, our listeners, for listening. You all take care out there, and make sure you wash your damn hands. You have been listening to JNA podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe, and thank you for listening.
Take it easy, people.